Wow, Oscar De La Hoya airs out Canelo Alvarez and tells it all on him. Says that he always wanted to make certain fights, but Canelo refused. And he said he'll never fight David Benavidez because he's scared. And he knows it because Canelo Alvarez was the same way when he was promoting him. Now, before we get into this next video, make sure that you hit my like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subbed to the channel. Man, so Hall of Famer Oscar De La Hoya, he ain't hold no punches. And he went straight at Canelo Alvarez's neck, and he says that he knows all of this because we all know that he dealt with Canelo Alvarez for years and years, and Canelo was his fighter. And Oscar De La Hoya has been on record for years saying that these fighters need to fight the best competition because they did it in his era, and Canelo Alvarez, according to him, has always refused to do it. Canelo Alvarez, we know, he was with Oscar De La Hoya for a long time. It was a lot of fights that fans wanted to see, and we couldn't see them, because of the different promotional companies and whatnot, or that's what we thought. But Oscar De La Hoya, he's saying something different. Now, about 3 years or more ago, Canelo Alvarez, he broke away from Oscar De La Hoya, and he said he was becoming a free agent and he was going to be working with DAZN. But he also said that he's glad to become a free agent because now he'll be able to move and work with any network he needs to work with to make the big fights happen. Right? And in a sit-down interview, I vividly remember Canelo Alvarez saying that Oscar De La Hoya held him back from making a lot of fights that he wanted to make, right? One fight that he talked about was the Jamal Charlo fight. And in that interview, he says, now I'm a free agent and I'm going to be able to move around and make fights like Jamal Charlo and David Benavidez, and I will make the fights that the fans want to see. Now, it sounded good, and I was all for Canelo Alvarez. At that point in time, I was saying Canelo Alvarez is a real dog, and it was Oscar De La Hoya holding him back because that is what Canelo Alvarez said. He said it was Oscar that was keeping him from fighting all of these fighters that the fans were screaming for him to fight. But Oscar, he says different, right? And Oscar saying that he knows that Canelo Alvarez, he'll never fight David Benavidez. And he knows that because Canelo Alvarez used to be his fighter. And he says that Canelo refused to take a lot of fights, big fights that they wanted to make, but Canelo Alvarez, right, and his team refused to make these fights. He says he always wanted to make a fight with Canelo and Jamal Charlo. He says at one point he wanted to make a fight between Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius Andrade. He says, but Canelo refused to fight these fighters, and he always refused to fight certain type of fighters that he would bring to the table for Canelo Alvarez. But he said, Canelo was my fighter at the time, and it was my job to cater to my fighter's wishes. Because Canelo was the biggest superstar and the biggest attraction in boxing. Time reveals all truth. And now we're seeing what Oscar De La Hoya is saying is the truth, and what Canelo Alvarez was saying, blaming it all on Oscar De La Hoya. It wasn't all Oscar. It was Canelo Alvarez, because now he's a free agent and he's done the exact opposite of what he said he was going to do. Remember, Canelo, not too long ago, he turned down money, right? Big money to fight Jamal Charlo and David Benavidez, and decided to take less money to fight Bivol in the third fight with Triple G that's 40 plus years old and washed up. What Oscar De La Hoya is saying, it holds a lot of weight now. And it took some years for us to find out, because myself, I said, look, I want to see how Canelo Alvarez is going to move now that he's a free agent. I want to see if Canelo Alvarez is going to do what he said he was going to do, right? I want to see who was actually stopping these fights from happening all these years when Canelo was with Golden Boy. And now we're seeing very clear that it was Canelo. It wasn't all Oscar. And Oscar is airing out Canelo Alvarez, and he's saying that he's always known that Canelo was afraid to fight David Benavidez. And he's saying that that fight will never happen because Canelo Alvarez, he picks and chooses his opponents. He says Canelo's very, very smart, and he knows what type of opponents to go up against and face, and he knows the opponents not to get in there and face. He says that he knows Canelo sees that David Benavidez is too young, too talented, too big for him, too long, and too dangerous. And he says Canelo Alvarez is not willing to take those type of risks. He's only willing to get in there and fight fighters that he knows that he's going to beat. Now, a lot of people might say, well, he got in there and fought Bivol. Canelo Alvarez thought he knew he could beat Bivol. When you went back and look at tape on Bivol's previous fights, Bivol did not look good at all. Bivol was struggling with opponents that didn't look like that they was nowhere near on the level of Canelo Alvarez. Now, I don't know if it was because of the style matchups. I don't know if it was just because Bivol only fights up to the level of his competition. But Canelo Alvarez tried to cherry pick Bivol, and it turned all bad for him. And now we seen Canelo Alvarez in his last fight with Triple G, a 40-year-old man that's well out of his prime. And Canelo, he gassed down the stretch. You know, he gassed out down the stretch, and he let Triple G come on in the later rounds and have a lot of success. And that should have never happened. Now remember, after the press conference of the last Triple G fight, the first fighter that Canelo Alvarez got asked about was David Benavidez, because obviously that's what the fans want to see. David Benavidez was Canelo Alvarez's mandatory on 2 separate occasions, and Canelo Alvarez refused to fight him. So people want to see this fight because it's well past due. So the media asked him about David Benavidez, and what did Canelo Alvarez do? He got very agitated, right? And you can see that he has no intentions on fighting David Benavidez. The first thing that he does is start saying, who has David Benavidez fought to deserve to fight me? Not, yeah, I'll fight him because he is the mandatory to my WBC strap. No. He's going to do everything that he can to get around from fighting David Benavidez. And now the whole world sees it. And if you don't see it, you're just blind. And David Benavidez sees it, and he's called Canelo Alvarez all type of pussies. David Benavidez's dad, he's called Canelo Alvarez all type of bitches because they see that Canelo Alvarez is afraid to fight David Benavidez. And now you got Oscar De La Hoya telling you the same thing. And Oscar saying, I know his characteristics because he used to be my fighter, and he did the same thing with certain fighters when I was promoting him. So he's not going to change the way that he's always moved in his career. And yeah, a lot of people's going to say that Oscar De La Hoya is just hating on him, right? But the thing is the proof is in the pudding. We see what's happening. We see how Canelo Alvarez is moving now that he's been a free agent, like I said, for probably 3+ years now. He hasn't had no promoter to hold him back or stop him from doing anything that he wants to do in the sport of boxing. But he refuses to fight these certain fights. He's even turning down more money and taking less money to fight what he looks at as lesser competition. So who's telling the truth? Like I said, time reveals all truth. Y'all let me know what you think. Do you think that Oscar De La Hoya is telling the truth? Who do you believe? And do you think that Oscar De La Hoya is right when he says that Canelo Alvarez will never fight David Benavidez? Drop a comment in the comment section. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subbed to the channel. There you go, talking that boxing again, and I'm gone.